video I'm going to show you how I make templates for conical shaped slab mugs like this. To make a mug like this you will need a template like this shape, sort of a little arc shape, and they're quite simple shapes but they're a little bit tricky to do if you're just doing them freehand. I know of 3 really simple ways of making perfectly shaped templates like this so that you can make a nice conical mug like this.
For this first method, you're going to need a piece of paper about 30 by 20 inches. You'll also need a professional woodworking compass like this one. This one's an 8-inch compass, although you can get different sizes. You can get larger ones, 10-inch and 12-inch, I believe. They're much better than these tiny little ones that you'd use for geometry. You also need a straight edge and a ruler and a pencil, and also some craft foam, a sheet of A3 craft foam. So start off by drawing a point on the edge of your piece of paper, and then what you're going to do is you're going to draw 2 large arcs on that edge, and the diameter of the first arc is going to be 15 inches. You don't have to use these measurements, but these are the measurements that I've used to make the template and the mugs that I showed you right at the beginning of the video. So I start off by marking a point 7.5 inches away from the midpoint that I made when I started out, and that gives me a complete diameter of 15 inches. And then I use the compass, the large compass, to draw a semicircle from each point. I'll put a link in the description below if you're interested in buying any of the equipment that I use in this video. So now I'm drawing the points for the second semicircle. The base of the second semicircle is about 5.5 inches away from the first semicircle, and that's going to be the length of the mug, which is, it sounds like a very large mug, but I do like really large coffee mugs, and also the clay will shrink when it's fired, so the mug itself ends up being about 5 inches high. And I have a little visitor here who needs a snack, so I've got to go and get him a quick snack first before I carry on. So yeah, you draw your second semicircle once you've marked your points. And that creates a big rainbow shape on your paper. And then once you've drawn the 2 arcs, what you do is you take your straight edge and you draw a series of lines that go from the central point that was marked on the edge of your paper, radiating out to the outer semicircle. Draw a series of those all the way around the circle. And with this particular mug template, I'm only going to use a section of these semicircles, but I'm drawing lines all the way around because I'm going to make another template with the offcut when I've finished. But you'll see what I mean in a second. You only need a section of the semicircles that you've drawn the lines on. So I'm just removing the piece of paper there because it was a roll of paper that I used. It's quite curly. So once you've removed the piece of paper, just cut it out along the 2 semicircles. And then what you're going to do is you're going to use that straight edge and line it up with one of the radial lines that you drew earlier on. And you can experiment with which one suits you, which one you like most, to create your conical mug shape. And that's the base of the mug. And as you can see, it makes really quite a nice shape for a conical mug. And I'm going to show you what to do with that paper conical template in a moment, but before I do that I just wanted to demonstrate something else. Now you might be wondering why you use that great big arc of paper. For example, if you take this small section that I cut out from the paper template earlier on, you might imagine that this would be the right piece of paper to use for your mug, because it's a lot more, the size is a lot more sort of mug sized. And yeah, you might just be wondering why it's necessary to use the great big arc. But if you draw a small semicircle on this little offcut and then cut it out in the way that you did before, you can experiment with the shape that it makes, and what you'll find is that it makes a really flared out bowl shape rather than a mug shape. And that's because the base of the cone is much narrower than the rim of the cone, and it creates a really flared out bowl, which is, it's quite a nice shape. You might want to make a mug shaped in this way. It's more of a, probably more of a teacup, I would have thought, and it looks quite nice. But if you want to make a narrower cone, which has more of a gradual slope, then you need to use the larger arc. So this is the wider piece, and I'm just checking out which of the radial lines I want to line the template up against. So just measuring it out. You don't have to line it up exactly on one of the lines that you've drawn. You can use at any point between two of the lines, and then just use a pencil to mark the place that you want to cut your paper. So I've marked a spot there between two of the lines, and I'm going to use my ruler just to draw an additional line that's running parallel to the radial line next to it. And then you can cut your template out on the line that you just drew. And there you have your template. Now you can use that as a paper template if you like, but it's a little bit fragile, and it lasts probably for about 2 or 3 mugs because it absorbs moisture from the clay. So a better idea is, if you like the template that you've made, you can draw, trace around it on some craft foam and then cut the craft foam out. And this is water resistant, and you can use it as many times as you like. I really like craft foam for making templates. It's not expensive, you can write on it so you can label your templates. It doesn't crease, and it also doesn't stick to the clay when you're using it. So I'm just going to give you a quick overview on how I actually use the templates now, just so that you can, just to demonstrate that they do actually work, that you can create a conical shaped mug with a template that's been made in this way. It's not a complete video here on how to make a conical mug, it's just to give you a sort of an idea of what I do. If you want to watch a whole video on how I make slab mugs, and in particular conical mugs, then I'll put a link in this video right now, so you can visit that video now if you'd like to. For this method you'll need a large piece of board. This piece is 33.5 inches by 35 inches. You can use any kind of board you like. You'll also need a long piece of wood. This is just a roller guide, an old roller guide that I wasn't using very much anymore. And what you need to do is you need to drill some holes along it. these holes are spaced about 1 inch apart all the way along. And you're going to use that to draw some concentric circles all the way around the midpoint of your board by pinning the piece of wood to the center of the board and then rotating the piece of wood around. So I'm just using a panel pin there. It's a carpet pin actually, just because it's small and thin. Doesn't need to be too strong, just as long as it keeps the piece of wood in place. So you just hammer it in gently into the first hole on your piece of wood, just hammering it in enough so that it stays in place. It doesn't need to go right the way through. And then once it's firmly in place, you take a pencil with a nib that is thin enough to go through the holes that you've drilled, and then just rotate the piece of wood around on the axis in the center of the board. I've seen a few other videos on how to make these template generating boards, and I think the best one that I saw was by somebody called Curly's Clay Creations, so you might want to check out her video too. I've adapted it a little bit just to suit what I needed. So what you do is you just draw circles all the way around using the holes that you drilled in your piece of wood. And then using your straight edge, you just draw lines going out from the center to the outside all the way around the circle. And the brilliant thing about this particular method is that you can make an endless number of templates using this board. Unlike the first method that I showed you, the first method that I showed you, you can use to create a few templates. But with this one, it can be part of your pottery equipment for as long as you like, and you can use it as many times as you like. And then once you're done drawing your lines, you can use any kind of see-through material that you like to draw out a template of the size that you want. I'm using a sheet of acetate, clear acetate here, but you can use tracing paper or whatever you like really, anything that you can see the lines through. So you draw out your section, and then once you've drawn it out with your pen, you can just cut out your template. And with this board, you can basically make templates of any size or shape that you want. This is just a section that's going to be the right size for the conical mug. So there you go, there's your conical mug shape. And you can either use the acetate sheet or the clear sheet. I quite like the acetate sheet. The only problem that I have with it is that it is quite sticky, and if you put it on clay that's quite fresh, it will stick a little bit to the clay. So what I prefer to do is just to use it as a template to then cut out a piece of craft foam, which, as I said earlier on, doesn't stick to the clay at all, unless the clay is really, really soggy, which isn't a good idea anyway. So yeah, I cut it out of craft foam. And there you have it. That's my second way of making a conical template. And here is method 3. So this is another option to make a template for a conical mug. It's a website called templatemaker.nl, and it's a really good website. If you go to the home page, you can see along the top here you've got the option to make a template of pretty much any shape that you might like.
And the one to make a conical mug is this one here. It's called Cone, and then in brackets it's got truncated. So just double click on that and it'll take you to this template here. And here is an impression of what the template's going to look like once you've customized it with your measurements. And here you've got key parameters. And what I do is I select under units, I select inches. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in some measurements here that are going to generate a template that's going to be the same size and shape as the other methods that I've used, just so that you can compare them, compare like against like. So with the top diameter, I'm going to say it's going to be 4 inches, and then the bottom diameter. See, as you change the parameters, this design will automatically change, just giving you an idea of what it's going to look like. So the bottom diameter I'm going to say is 2.5 inches, and then the height I'm going to say is 5.5 inches, which is big for a mug, but my clay will shrink when it's fired, so it's going to be more like 4.5, somewhere between 4.5 and 5 inches tall. And then these things here, it says optional parameters. Now I usually set these to 0 because if you can see here, I don't know whether you can see it, but there is, if you leave these parameters on here, you get this sort of weird 3D effect on the template, which I don't find very helpful. I just want to have a simple line. So I'm just going to set that to 0. And then this other one, which is glue flap size, I'm also going to set to 0. So it takes away that sort of 3D look, which I don't need. And then I just leave margin, I leave the same. And then under here, under page size, what I do is I select A4 landscape, because my printer prints off A4 paper. So I don't know what printer you're using, but have a look at these various different options and decide which one suits you best. So A4 landscape, and then as you can see, it's now disappeared, so you can only see part of the template here. So what you need to do is go down here to where it says File Format, down here where the cursor is moving, and then go down to Tiles and select Tiles, and then what that does is it breaks the design up so that it fits it onto 2 or 3 if you've got a large template. However many pages of A4 paper, it will break that design up onto A4 pieces of paper, so that you can then print them off and then assemble them. So once you're happy with the design, and you can play around with these parameters, you don't have to use the same ones that I've used, just adjust them and see what you like the look of. For example, if I change the bottom diameter to 1 inch, it'll completely change the shape of the template to this shape, which I wouldn't want to use for a mug. So I'm just going to put it back to 2.5, and then I'm going to click Create at the bottom there. You can see the Create button. Click Create, and then it's downloaded the image, and then click on the download, and it gives you this template which is spread out onto 2 pieces of A4 paper. So I'm going to print that off, and then you have to cut and paste the 2 pieces of paper together to make the complete template, but I'll show you how to do that. It's pretty straightforward. So I'm going to print that off now.
So as you see, the template's been printed off on 2 sheets of A4 paper, which you need to join up. There is a little faint line on either of those pieces of paper, which is where the template needs to join. So what I do is I cut off one of those guidelines, and then I overlap it on top of the other piece of paper so that they join up in the right place. If that makes sense, you'll see what I mean in a second. So just cut along one of the faint lines. I think if you've got a colour printer, it prints it out on different colours, but mine's just a black and white printer, so it just comes out as a pale grey line. So then you line it up on top of the other pale grey line, and that should give you a template of exactly the right size. So just sellotape it together, it's not very high tech. Cut it out. And of course this is just a paper template, so it's not very durable. Fine for one or two mugs, but again, if you want to make something a bit more durable, then just do what I did with the other two versions and just cut it out of craft foam. And there you have it, another simple way of making a conical template for your mugs, your slab mugs. I really hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please do give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel, and then you'll get a notification next time I upload a new video. Thanks for watching. Bye!